Our expert for this session, as you can see, is Upasana Taku. Upasana is the chairperson of the Mobikwik board and the executive director, co-founder and COO of the Mobikwik group. She was featured among the top 15 richest self-made women in India in the Kotak Wealth Hurun Leading Wealthy Women list. Before founding Mobikwik, Upasana worked at PayPal and HSBC. She's also an industrial engineer, having studied at Punjab Technical University and Stanford University. Mobikwik turned profitable in 2021 and ended FY 2022 with 5.4 billion rupees in revenue. Upasana, welcome to Ask the Expert. First question for you. You're known to be a phenomenal closer. What does that mean? What does being a phenomenal closer mean?
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, Suresh, and great to speak with you again. I think my thesis on being a phenomenal closer is the following. So many times, we hear people talking about, I really want to win that deal. These are the terms I want. But of course, the other party wants something else. And I think that being a good closer means that you don't think just for yourself, but you also think for the other party. And what I mean by that is that, of course, you want to win all the points, whether it is valuation, terms, whatever it is you want. But if you try to drive a very hard bargain, which is completely one-sided, then I don't think it will work out in the long term, whether it is any, contract you're signing, any employee you are hiring, or even, a round that you're trying to raise. So try to work from a point of view where the deal has to be a win-win for both sides, not just for your side, because then it will last long term and create value for both parties.
Can one train oneself to become a better closer? And if so, how? How can I train myself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't know whether people will like my advice, but I find a bunch of these legal drama shows to be very useful, and not the ones which are just showing, brazen charm being used. But I think that there are a lot of interesting business and legal shows out there, and I found them to be quite interesting because from time to time they will show a scenario where it's a difficult situation, and how do you figure out what would be the key points for yourself, what would be the key points for the other side, and only then you can come to terms which will be make everybody happy and will make a deal happen.
That's actually very good advice, because many of us like watching legal dramas and business shows on OTT. So now we are turning a personal hobby or a personal activity into something that can actually help us in business. All right, let me dive into some controversy right away, Upasana. How healthy is the women startup ecosystem in India? And I just don't mean women entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, angels, VCs, bankers, the whole chain of women's entrepreneur. How healthy or unhealthy is it in India?
It's completely unhealthy right now. I think that, it's not a secret. I started about a decade ago when fintech was not a keyword and women founders, was... especially in tech, was a little unknown, I would say. So from a decade's point of view, what I can say is we have come a long way on the entrepreneur side. So today I see enough female founders, in all streams of startups that I can think about, whether it is D2C, whether it is fashion, whether it is gadgets, whether it is, fintech, many, if you think about edtech, all of these areas, I can see enough women founders. Of course, the number is not more than 10 to 15% of Indian startups have either a founder or a co-founder who is a woman. But this is still a very strong advancement, in the last decade. Not so much on the investor side, banker side, etc., etc. There are practically very few women in the investment banking circles, as well as in the venture capital circles. There are, but that number is still, I would say, less than 5% or 3% of their cohort. I think in the startup sector, we might be from a founder perspective and even at a leadership level, senior management level, we are seeing, a healthier participation. it would stand somewhere in the 12 to 18% range. But still, it's inching towards 20-25%. So I have hope that it will strengthen. I think we need to have many more women, in the other areas that I mentioned that form part of the ecosystem.
Unhealthy but getting better would be a summary of your answer. Okay, I'm going to take some questions that have come in from the audience. First question from Sujay Jha. He says, how does a startup expand its business with limited capital? And how do you ensure that a bootstrap model is quickly transited to a full-fledged financial fundraise and expansion model? That's the first question we have in the audience.
Right. So I think startup by default, doing a startup means that, you're not a division or you're not an incubation within a large, secure setup. It means by default that you have limited resources. Limited resources means limited money, limited people, you have a lot of constraints. And the whole thought process is that with those constraints, with the limited resources that you have access to, what can you create? What is that product, idea, service that you have in mind? And can you replicate a real proof point, a product market fit, an early product, a prototype, something to demonstrate confidence amongst the investor base? So my personal view is that always have, something, unless you're doing something that requires a lot of capex. My view is that at least have a demo, a prototype, or an early product ready and also in the market, so you can get market validation. Unless the capex requirements are very high. Now, then it is a choice. Today, the early stage ecosystem in India is extremely strong. It is quite easy, to raise seed and angel money. Of course, nothing is easy, but I'm saying relative to other stages, the first check is the easiest check to get, for most founders. And there is enough depth in the early stage ecosystem in India. There are enough angel investors, there are enough seed funds, so that if you will work hard with a strategy and target the right investor base, you should be able to raise the seed check if that is a route you would like to take. However, if you have the chops, if you have some savings, I would say, hold on. I mean, in our case, we bootstrapped to 4 years. And when we finally raised our Series A check, we had a coveted license from the Reserve Bank of India for the payments ecosystem. We had some 2.5 million users, and we had revenue and we were profitable, and we had some 30-40 employees. That's when we raised our Series A check. But of course, things have moved along quite a lot. So I don't know whether people would like to bootstrap as much. But if you're doing a B2B business, you must. Your cost base is low. And the more proof that you can demonstrate, the better terms you will have when you raise money. So bootstrap for a year and a half, whatever it takes to show the first inklings of revenue. And then you are better off raising money at your own terms.
All right. Next question comes from Ashutosh Dan. Upasana, he asks you a personal question. What is your experience about your first failure and what motivated you to turn around?
Oh, okay. Okay, good one. My first failure. Okay. So this is a real failure from the Mobikwik journey. And what happened is that, in a fintech, who are your partners? Your supply partners are banks, because you're ultimately distributing financial products for whom the pipes or the OEMs are the banks. So the first partnership that I had worked on for our payments acquiring business at Mobikwik, it took me maybe 8 or 9 months to get that partnership to contract stage, where the contract is finally ready, agreed upon, and both parties have to sign. It took me, a good 6 to 8 months, I would say. And I still remember that at the last moment, it was one of the major private banks. They decided, they were just not signing it. And I was getting impatient, 1 week, 2 weeks. But of course, they have hierarchies, so you have to wait. Maybe it's in signing. Ultimately, I went to Bombay and I got to know that they were not going to sign the deal, despite having done all the due diligence and all the work with us, because there was another company that they were going to do the deal with. And the founder of that company was an ex-employee of that bank. So of course they had more trust. So they went ahead with that. It's fair. But what I did not like is that they were not upfront communicating that we are not going ahead with you. They were just wasting our time. And when I finally landed up in their office in Mumbai and figured this out, I was of course livid. So this was a big failure because while we are waiting for signing, we have done all the product discussions, the risk discussions, we have done the tech integration, and we are waiting for signing to make something go live. That's when we figure out that this deal is not happening. So how did I turn it around? I think that's the real thing. I decided that मैं Bombay से वापस नहीं आ रही हूँ. I'm not coming back to Gurgaon, Delhi, where I live, until I find another bank who is willing to sign the same contract on same or similar terms. And this time I'm not going to take 6 to 8 months. I was very clear. So I stuck around, and I think I was there for the entire week, at least 4 days. And by the third day, second day, third day, I met several banks. Another large major private bank of India, in fact, a larger one, they were in on the deal. In the first meeting, they said, this looks interesting. Come back tomorrow with more details, or come back next week, they said. I said, what next week? I'm here only. I'll come back again tomorrow and I'll come with all this data. And then I went back the third day. Basically, when you're doing a deal, I reached the sort of term sheet stage in that visit to Mumbai itself. Everything was agreed. The commercials were agreed. The integration dates were agreed. Everything was agreed in an email while I was still on the same trip in which I got rejected by the other bank. And then I came back to Delhi, and of course, the regional team here in Delhi had to do a lot of work, paperwork, etc. And it took us a month. But in 1 month, we went live with the second bank with the same product. So the moral of the story is, I don't give up easily. So don't give up. And the more people put you down, that should, put more fire on your ass to get things done. Better, faster, and more in your favor. So that's my...
Fire under your rear side. That's her advice. And let that fire drive you. All right. Upasana, next question comes from Kamesh. He says, I'm juggling between a job and a startup. I've built my startup because I earn a monthly salary for my job, and that helps me with my expenses. But I'm not able to give 100% both to the job or the startup. Now, Upasana, you worked for 18 years, PayPal, HSBC, and other companies. Can one actually juggle a full-time job and founding a startup in your view?
I think like at the ideation stage, very early stage, one can. Like when you are working on your startup idea on nights and weekends, it is possible to do it. But when you really want to build it out, once you're through the ideation stage, the initial building the team stage and how you're going to launch, I think you can't really launch and scale much. So I can tell you a live example from my co-founder Bipin's life. So he was actually an employee of Freescale Semiconductor here in Noida when he was working on building the Mobikwik team and the idea, etc. So I think he did this nights and weekend things for maybe 4 months or 5 months. And then, one fine day, he realized that he needs to pick up the pace and, this whole thing is not working out. And almost in a, I would say calculated, but a very abrupt decision, he decided to put in his papers and, tell his manager that, look, I have to leave, I have to do this. And it was an extremely difficult decision for him. I remember because he called me that I'm thinking about it. I have my resignation written up, but I'm thinking about it very seriously because he was the only breadwinner in his family. And he had 2 younger siblings, a father who had a stroke and therefore was, at home and not earning. So he had a lot of responsibility on his head. And giving up a job to pursue your startup dream when you are the sole breadwinner was an extremely difficult one. But I think the way he and I discussed about it and what we said is that, what I asked him is that, do you have runway for your family for 1.5 years? Because if you have, then within 1 year, our goal will be to generate revenue so that you can get a salary. And if we are not able to generate revenue in 1 year, then exactly at the 1 year mark, you can start looking for a job again. And that much confidence one has to have that one can again secure a good, high-paying job if the startup were not to work. So this is sort of how he did it. It was a risk, but it was a calculated risk. And of course, we were able to get things done. in time for him to, continue with Mobikwik.
Upasana, the obvious question that comes from that answer is that you had a co-founder. Right? Many people asking how to find a good co-founder, where and how to find these people.
Well, that's extremely hard. I think it's almost as hard or harder than finding a life partner. Because, life partner mein you have fewer, you have constraints, you have your own requirements, but at least the person, like for example, if I'm an engineer, my life partner doesn't need to be an engineer. He can be a doctor, he can be a journalist, he can be a pilot. Like there are dearth of at least professions can be many. And then it's more about values and how you want to live your life and, what are your aspirations, etc. I think it's extremely hard. I don't have a amazing answer for this, but I think the right answer is to meet enough people. So in my case, I had just moved back from the US at the end of 2008. And my intention was to first study the market, and which is what I did. I worked for some nonprofits in rural India, working on microfinance, financial inclusion, etc. And then my aim was in that 1 year, I will also develop a professional network for myself and then figure out what idea I want to work on and who do I want to start with. So I'd given myself 1 or 2 years, 1.5 years or so to do that. So it was hard. I didn't know, but I used to go to all the startup events that happened at that time. Startup Saturday used to happen. Today there are so many forums and events that are happening for the specific sector of startup that you are interested in. So one would go there and meet like-minded people and see if you hit it out with someone. And then also don't decide in one meeting, let it be several meetings. The other option, of course, is to look at your professional network, like companies that you've been working with today or have worked in the past, or your college network where you have studied and where you've known people that you can trust in terms of the quality of those people. So trust is the most important thing, I would say. The trust equation has to match and the risk-taking ability has to match. These are the two things that need to really match, and everything else is of course one can figure out. So it's a hard one, but I think those would be the ideas I have to help you in finding a co-founder. You must have either a co-founder or a very strong next level team that you can trust. That is a must, because look, Rome was not built by a single person. So no startup can be built by a single person. You need the right level of, leaders, supporters, employees, to help you move forward.
All right. For those of you who are joining us on YouTube Live, welcome to the show. If you're joining in late, I'm in conversation with Upasana Taku, co-founder of Mobikwik. If you have any questions, please write your questions in the chat window. As soon as we see your questions, I'll take your questions and pose them to Upasana. Next question, Upasana, is from a person named Charan Damu. And I don't know if you have a strong opinion on this, but I'll tell you the question. Charan says, I started a food aggregator for home food. I imagine homemade food, running this in a small area. Now I want funding to expand to different regions. From where can I get funding? Any thoughts on the food business? I've been hearing all sorts of things about negative network economics. The more you deliver, the more you lose. It's a drain on money. Very tough to make money in this business. Any thoughts on food delivery?
No, I think you're right. I think the unit economics have to be very clear. So if you are making money in the one geography that you are in, and if you can prove that model, then I would say, go to all the investors who have already invested in the food and grocery businesses in India, and especially the ones who came in at early stage. Those would be the right people, to go after. And you can also look at global investors who have been investing in this space. But yeah, like Suresh was saying, you need to make sure that your story and your unit economics from the one region that you focus in, or the area, that city that you are in, are speak for themselves. Like the numbers of what you have done already should demonstrate the capability of your idea.
Okay, next question comes in from Sunita Bisht. Sunita asks, all right, how do you scale up with a limited budget if you're a startup? You can start a business, you can bootstrap. But the moment you want to hit any sense of scale, Upasana, you're going to need capital. What do you do then if you're not able to raise?
So, I mean, see, I think it depends on the business. Like B2B businesses, there's still more opportunity to scale. There are enough businesses in India, like Zoho is an excellent example, and there are many others behind them, who have almost, gone ahead with bootstrapping. I think Zerodha is another example that comes to mind. These are completely bootstrap businesses, never raised money, and are now, large profitable companies. So it is possible to scale. I think you have to be very smart and innovative with your resources, and the number of people that you have that you can afford from the revenue and the cash flows you are generating need to be extremely smart and innovative hustlers. So as an example, what do you need to scale? In order to scale, you need to first acquire more customers, whether they are businesses or consumers. So customer acquisition is something that you need to work on. Then within customer acquisition, there are organic ways of acquiring customers. I think people have gone a long way in demonstrating that, whether it is using SEO, whether it is using content, whether it is using social media. I mean, people have built, customer base and even membership base of millions just organically. So then you need to hustle on that, building that kind of pull by virtue of your content or your, search engine marketing. So I was just giving that as an example, but I was just trying to tell you that it is possible to bootstrap and scale. You just need to be very, very strong with capital allocation. As in, you're generating 10 lakhs of revenue. After paying all costs, let's say you have some money that you are generating, 3 lakhs, 4 lakhs, whatever it is. So that is the amount you can reinvest into the business. So you need to be very clear, how will I use that money? Will I use it for the right person? Will I use it for the right tool, product? What is it that you're going to use it for? So I think that innovation in product, very loyal consumer base, and organic acquisition. I think these would be some of the fundamental pillars on which you can bootstrap and scale as well.
Next question, once again, a personal question for you, Upasana. Like I introduced you in your introduction, you've been featured amongst the 15 richest self-made women in India by the Kotak Hurun Wealth Study. Right? Does this make you uncomfortable in any way that you're referred to as one of the richest women in India?
No, I'm not uncomfortable about it, but I just want to say that a lot of these net worth calculations, are based on private companies, and private companies, equity means it's still illiquid. So unless all the founders in these lists, are founders or promoters of listed company, it's like apples and oranges. So I'm a paper tiger from that perspective. I have a lot of net worth, but it is right now all tied into my company. So when Mobikwik gets listed, definitely I will be a fairly rich individual, and I would hope that I will deploy those funds, in the right manner, and hopefully be able to create impact towards the causes that I'm interested in.
Okay, so what does money mean to you, Upasana? Does it mean the ability to donate or support the causes that are dear to you? Does it mean luxury flights around the world? What does it mean to you?
Money means money today, and I want to, first ascertain that, I come from a very modest family background, to the extent that, I remember not being able to afford the fees for my graduate education, and I had to hustle up a scholarship so that I could study. So I don't come from a family, that was fairly rich or upper middle class. My father was a professor. He's passed away. My mom is a retired, music teacher. So very modest background. I have built my current net worth or asset base. I've built myself using my skills and my hard work. So I'm not embarrassed. Neither am I at the top of the world, so to speak. I'm not in a rat race with anyone. What money means to me is not having to think too much about, if I go to a mall, I don't have to think much whether I can buy this or that. Now, the second thing is that I'm built like that. So I have a very middle class mentality. I will still think twice. And I think I'm not much of a brand person. So in my company, I have often found a very young junior people who have watches that are more expensive than mine, but it doesn't bother me. I mean, I'm not driven by things like that. What money means to me is that I don't have to think twice if I want to spend money for comfort, for myself, for my family. I don't have to think twice when I have to help someone. Like last year, somebody I knew, a gardener in my complex, his right hand, his working hand got bitten off by a dog, and he had to get an emergency surgery, otherwise he would have lost his hand. So while there were people in the complex debating and negotiating with the owner of the dog, I didn't think twice. I just went ahead and paid for it and made sure he got the surgery, because what was more important for me is that his young children should not suffer, their education should not suffer, so they need their breadwinner of the family to be coming back into great shape very fast, and then we can continue suing that dog owner and recover the money later whenever we are able to. So that is what money means to me, supporting the causes I believe in. And to that extent, I don't like injustice. I like to support education. I like to support girls in STEM. There are certain causes that are important to me.
Or that, the muting and unmuting. All right. Next question from Rajita in the audience. Upasana, she asks you, how has the fintech landscape evolved since Mobikwik's inception? And what shape do you see it taking in the future? So two-part question. How has it evolved and where is it going to go in your view?
So I think fintech, the market has evolved in a great way. I mean, firstly, the keyword fintech did not exist when we started. There were barely few companies, I could count them, on my fingers, who were creating consumer fintech platforms. Today, not only do we have a lot of payment companies, consumer-facing payment companies, merchant payment companies, lending companies, wealth tech companies, insure tech companies, and so much more. So I am happy to tell you that FinTech India is now the third largest fintech market in the world after United States and China. So there is a lot of good work that has happened. I'll give you some stats. There were 25 million internet users in India when we started. And today, India has more than 550 million smartphones, 800 million bank customers, and a good 350 million Indians, unique, are actively transacting digitally using several, apps. So that's sort of the big jump, that has happened from 25 million to 350 million. But again, if you think about it, if only 350 million Indians are transacting digitally today, it's still a long way to go, right? Because there are 800 million Indians who have a bank account, and the overall population of the country is 1.4 billion. Even if you take out kids and extremely old people, that's still, you still want to reach at least that billion mark. So for the next 10, 20 years, FinTech India is going to be a very high growth sector. And I foresee that it will generate several very high value companies. And so even today, there are new opportunities arising. And I would welcome, wannabe entrepreneurs who are thinking about ideas. If you have an idea, if you think that you can create some amazing product, and there's a lot of opportunity, get started today, because outside of digital payments, which have reached 350 million Indians, all other financial products, whether it is credit products for consumers, credit products for small merchants, MSMEs, whether it is investment products, whether it is insurance products, whether it's cards. I mean, there's a whole gamut of financial products that have not yet reached more than 5-7% of India. So it's a very large TAM to go after.
All right. So Upasana, if I was a young entrepreneur and I ran into you in an airport and I managed to get 3 minutes of your time and I'm a wannabe fintech entrepreneur, what are the key phrases I should use to get Upasana Taku's attention in investing in my business?
Oh, okay. Firstly, I would, spend at least 30 seconds or a minute just telling me who you are. and why you are doing a fintech startup. So see, it's important that the founder is passionate about the cause that they are chasing, because there will be many, many good days, but there will be many more bad days in your journey of building a startup. And so it's important to know, like, how committed are you to the cause? And that will only come from who you are, why, what were you doing, why did you think about it? So spend a minute on that. Spend a minute about telling me about the product or the opportunity and who you are making it for, right? Like somebody can say, I'm doing this in digital payments or digital lending, but who are you making it for? Mobikwik, for example, is trying to bring payment, lending, savings products, so entire sort of a digital banking platform, but not for urban India so much. More and more for tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 India, where people have a bank account and smartphone, but they don't have access to any other financial product. So target customer and the product. And last, number 3 is why you will succeed. Like, what is it unique in your model, in your unit economics, in your thought process that will make sure that you will be able to build it and scale it, as opposed to all the other current or future competitors.
Suman from our audience asks, she says, Mobikwik has expanded its services beyond mobile payments. What inspired this diversification?
Oh, so I just want to tell you a story that, so my background, I used to work as a product manager, first for HSBC in San Diego, and then for PayPal in the Silicon Valley. And after I moved back to India, actually explicitly because I wanted to create impact. Every time I came back to India on vacation, I used to realize that at that time, India was so far behind in financial technologies and financial services. Our distribution was only available in the top cities by the top banks, and nobody else could access them. So that was something that I was really wanting to change. That's why I moved back to India. And when I started working for a few nonprofits, I actually worked in smaller towns and villages where microfinance and all these different alternative models were being worked on or experimented. And from that time itself, I wanted to do something like this. And my learning from that experience was that I cannot reach millions of Indians, from Agartala to Kanyakumari to Ladakh, one village at a time. These models, which are human distribution led, will take extremely long time. Like it will take 100 years to reach the entire country. And so I must start digitally. And so when you start digitally, how will you acquire customers? Like, what is a daily life need that you can solve for them in the financial services space? Of course, it's payments. So that's why we started from payments. And of course, it wasn't a change of heart. This was always the direction that first acquire consumers and small businesses for payments, which is a daily life activity. And then over a course of time, once you understand their data better, start cross-selling them financial products that are suitable for them. So the idea was to create impact. And that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, even today, 90% of Mobikwik's users, make less than 50,000 rupees per month. So we are trying to solve the digital banking need or the financial product needs for those users across all the small towns and villages of India.
Upasana, we have multiple people asking us a similar question, and I'll paraphrase the question for you. Many of them are working in jobs, full-time jobs or almost full-time jobs, and they want to become entrepreneurs. Some of them are 18, some of them are 24, some of them are 34, and some of them are in their 40s. How do I know if I have an entrepreneurial mindset or I'm better off being an employee? How can I tell? How can you tell? If I meet you, would you be able to do a blood test and tell me that you have the entrepreneurial hustle gene in you or you don't have the gene in you?
No, I can't tell you whether you can be an entrepreneur. You only can tell yourself. And the key things to look for is, are you willing to take a lot of accountability and ownership? Even at your work, are you willing to take on new projects and new ideas which are undefined and chaotic? And are you willing to do that, in addition to your regular work? Because that's a lot of effort you're willing to put in to make something successful. And once you take on those projects or goals, are you willing to take them through to the end with or without any sponsorship from your management or your co-workers? So I think those would like how much ownership and accountability are you willing to take in your job? That's number one. Number two, how much risk appetite do you have? Do you have adaptability? And that could be something you can test by, have you been able to survive some very difficult situations? Have you lived in different cities, been able to work in different environments? So adaptability is important, risk-taking capability is important, ability to take full ownership, is important. And then ultimately, it has to come from within. Like if you're doing a job and almost every day in the evening or night, you're having a hard time going to sleep because you think you have to do something of your own that only you can do, nobody else can do. And if that feeling is consistent, it can't be a one-day thing. Okay, I had this feeling in the beginning of 2008. And in August 2008, I decided, like after a good 4 or 5 months of struggling with that thought process, you create more confidence. Like you need to have a lot of confidence that you will be able to start on your own and you will be able to take it, take it to its the goalpost or the milestones you set for yourself. Don't assume anyone will help you. Like if you especially if you are a person who gets into distress very easily and you need other people to pull you out of that and help you, wo nahi ho sakta. You need to have the confidence and the courage that this is my baby, this is my idea, this is my startup, I need to do it. Even if I fail, it's okay. I need to prove to myself that I gave it my all. But I will work very hard to make it successful. I will not rest until I have turned every stone at every step along the way. So that kind of confidence you need to have, that kind of conviction you need to have, because you will see extremely dark days. Let me tell you, nobody talks about the dark days, but there are many, many difficult situations and dark days. Think about all the bad things that you have seen in your work experiences that have happened to your current or your past companies. Think about all the things that employees gossip about. Ki ye ho gaya, funding round didn't come through, some senior employees quit, this happened, that happened. All of that, assume that it's happening to you. Will you be able to cope with it, or will you just go under with stress? If you will go under with stress, then you are not cut out to be a founder. If you can live with it, and if you can still go to sleep no matter what happens, and next day morning get up and fight it, then you can do a startup.
Okay, that's a good guideline. Now, Upasana, clearly everybody can be an entrepreneur. Then you would have nobody working in Mobikwik. Everybody would be an entrepreneur. Yeah. But do you value intrapreneurship, that employees with an entrepreneur mindset who work in a company like yours? Do you value that and do you nurture that?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I would say even today, if today we have a role, let's say for VP of something or director of something, and we receive resumes from people who have worked in other fintech companies, banks, NBFCs, etc. We will look at them a certain way. But if there is an ex-founder who has done a similar business in the past, and even if they had to fold it down, and now they are currently doing a job or they're looking for their first job after folding up the startup, we will always look at them more positively. So we value an entrepreneur's courage and journey far more than most other organizations. I think we must, because we know that it takes a certain special type of skill and courage to be able to live through those situations. And outside of people having already done a startup, we also value within the company people who demonstrate entrepreneurial capabilities. For example, somebody who has been a couple of jobs they have done. Now they come to Mobikwik, they are in some middle management job. But outside of their role, they're always willing to take more. They're always asking their manager that, give me something more ambitious, give me something more challenging to do. So that is something that, we look for as founders, as leaders, as the HR leader. We are continuously looking for people who are demonstrating that they are far more entrepreneurial than others, and therefore they must be treated as such. Like we want to give them those opportunities where they can take a product from 0 to 100, and that would be a win for them, that you were the one who started this product, you launched this product, and now you have taken it from 0 to X crores.
Okay. Continuing on the people issue, Anand Vardhan Mala, one of our viewers, says, when starting a new team, who do you need in terms of people for different departments, excluding the co-product team, you directly need an HR head, you need an accounting head, you need a CFO right at the start. And if not, when is the time to invest in these other departments and other functions?
No. See, okay, that's the other thing you need to know. Day one, the founding team is everything. The founding team has to do the basic accounts. You can always, at the end of 6 months or whatever, hire a CA to do the accounting for you. You are the HR, you are the finance, all of these horizontal compliance functions, you can outsource. What you cannot outsource is this. HR you can do yourself, hiring people is very simple. Ops you can do. Product and tech you need to have. Sales and marketing you need to know. So these are the key things. So if the founders, let's say there are 3 founders, one is willing to do the distribution, which is either sales or marketing. One is willing to do the product and tech distribution, and one is willing to do business development or partnerships. Then you're sorted. This is the team you can start with, just as a 3-member founder team. And then to build the product, you may need some engineers to help that co-founder who is building it. But you don't need many of these. Like when you think about departments, big companies need. Startups don't need departments, not until you are a 50 people company. After that, you can think about having, departments that you need. And a lot of the compliance functions you can still keep, external.
So one thing I got from this interview, Upasana, that you sleep very well at night. That you get a good night's sleep is very important for an entrepreneur, no matter what happens.
We want that, no? We want that, Suresh. Like, I know it's not a question you've asked me, but I mean, we've seen in the last couple of years after COVID, we've seen few founders, not surviving. I mean, having heart attacks, etc. We don't want that to be the case. So it's important that your startup is your baby, but you also have a life. Like your life is your real life. It won't come again. So you need to do justice to yourself, manage your physical fitness, mental fitness, regardless of success and failure at work.
So every day when I open the newspapers, Upasana, or any digital portal, digital paper, I see stories of startup successes. Somebody raised money, somebody went public, somebody sold out, somebody cashed in. Once in a while, you do see stories of fraud or bad corporate governance, but 90% are success stories. And in real life, 90% of startups are doomed to fail in some form or the other. Right? So people are going to enter this thinking that I'm going to succeed, I'm going to become the next Upasana Taku, or I'm going to become the next Zerodha, or the next Paytm, or the next whoever else, right?
Yeah.
But the odds are against you. The odds are heavily stacked against you. What can you do to prepare when the odds are so heavily stacked against you as an entrepreneur?
So you need to have a lot of zeal, a lot of energy, a lot of hustle, and the go-getter attitude to get things done no matter what. See, if you give up easily, then it's not going to be easy. Like you said it, the odds are against you. Now, whether they are 80% against you, 90% against you, 70% against you, it's relative, but they're definitely against you. And so at every juncture, you have to prove yourself, and you have to prove it to yourself also, right? Because you're investing years of your life. And if you can't make anything valuable out of it, then you are also, doing a disservice to yourself and your family. So it's definitely a very, very uphill battle. But I mean, think about it like this. It is not impossible, right? Because if there are so many startup founders who are able to do it, it is not impossible. Number one. Number two, we've all heard this impossible task of, vertically scaling up Tiger Hill when, India and Pakistan had last conflict in the Kashmir Valley. But, a platoon of our, army was able to do it. So my point being, whether it is the startup sector, whether it is sports, whether it is business, we have seen people who have very bold ambitions and have the conviction to follow through with hard work, with a lot of time spent towards achieving these goals, are willing to make it. So I am personally a big believer in, I don't believe so much in luck. If I were believing in luck, I would say that I have very bad luck. I mean, I've had many times. I gave you an example when we were going to launch one of our new products. A major bank backed out. But that didn't deter me. I mean, of course, it deterred me that day. But the next day, I was 10x more convinced that I must make this work with another bank, and I must prove that bank wrong, that they didn't support me, and they must feel bad. I must become so successful that they realize that why they did not partner with us. So I think that kind of josh, that kind of courage under fire, passion in your belly is a must. It's an extremely difficult and audacious journey. It is an uphill mountain expedition that you are getting on in so many ways. And to think that, see, you can't be foolhardy about it. So I think what I say is that if you're doing it for 3 years, 4 years, and if there is something conceptually wrong in the way you are doing the startup, which is why you're not able to achieve that level of success that you thought, then it might be foolhardy to just continue. Then you might as well find a pivot or sell your startup to some other larger company and start something, afresh. So that kind of thought process one has to be open and agile to appreciate that. But you can't give up easily either. You must give it your all. And I would say that set some goal for yourself, that if I start today, in 1 year, I must get here. In 2 years, I must get here. And if I don't, and if I'm very far away, then, I will pivot it, or I will become part of a larger startup, and I will, restart my journey. Because there are many paths of achieving the same thing. If you can't do it on your own, you can also become part of a larger startup, which will give you some cover fire, so to speak, while you build out that product.
Okay, next question comes in from our viewer, Rakesh. Rakesh is an edtech entrepreneur, Upasana. And edtech is in the news for all the wrong reasons these days. Based on your experience, he asks, what are the common challenges faced by edtech companies during the scaling process, and how can I overcome them? I know you're not an edtech specialist, but if you have a view on edtech, I think it would help, Rakesh.
So I think my view is that first things first, I don't know what kind of edtech business you have, but I think a lot of edtech businesses saw extremely high growth and consumer metrics during COVID, because everyone was, at home. And they needed things to support their kids' education, regardless of the age of the kid. So I think that those days are over, and many edtech companies have seen degrowth because of just this macro factor since then. So I would say that, if you have seen re-rating or change in metrics in your business because of, normalization of life happening, then I would give it a, serious view and think about the fact whether you want to continue. That said, there are edtech businesses who are doing well, are profitable. It just depends on what kind of need you are fulfilling. So therefore, the most important thing then becomes is that what is your current status? Do you have a product that has a specific target customer? Do you have enough, consumers for that business? Do you have enough revenue and strong unit economics? If you have positive unit economics for a business, and if there is growth possible in your target segment, in your product, in your TAM, if there is growth possible and there is no clear competition, or even if there is competition, it is not direct competition, then you have an amazing opportunity in front of you, because education is the key to India's growth. And, the spur of, growth that we are seeing in the economy today is because, last 20, 30 years, we've been educating so many Indians, and more, it's creating value for our economy. So education is always going to be important for Indian families and parents. So long as you have the good unit economics, the right target market, and growing trends in your business, then don't worry about the current negative sentiment about your sector. It will change. You can't make your company's decision based on what is happening to other players in the sector. But you can evaluate your business based on these fundamental questions that I just described.
Thank you, Upasana. We have 10 minutes more to go. So if you have questions, you have 10 minutes more to send us your questions for Upasana. All right, Upasana, I'll just let her have a little water, because we have been keeping her here talking for the last 1 hour. Upasana, a few startups in India have been in the radar, in the news and on the radar for all the wrong reasons, many of them for lapses in corporate governance. Some of them blame their venture capitalists, saying, I was pushed too hard, that's why I did it. Some people say that these are the pressures of growth. I'm sure there must be truth in both these statements, that there are a bunch of investors are pushing the entrepreneurs too hard. And some entrepreneurs also may be thinking of shortcuts to wealth and success and fame. Now, this is a real problem, right? Any advice for founders on how to get their corporate governance game right from day one, from the get-go?
Yeah. So remember, I said in one of the other questions that in the beginning, you can outsource your compliance. But what I meant is that you can outsource not hiring full-time people to do it. But that doesn't mean that you don't understand your responsibilities as a founder, because when you found, you will also be a director in your private limited company or partnership company, whatever that is. There are guidelines about filing taxes on time. There are guidelines about making sure your financial statements are in the ROC on time, and you can get the right kind of CAs and CS to do it for you at a fee. But as your company scales, I would say that after you have crossed the threshold of even 50 crores or 30 crores in revenue, you must have, the right people in your company, and the seniority of them can vary as the company scales. But making sure that you have a head of finance, you have somebody who is ensuring that your day-to-day compliances on GST, TDS, all kinds of taxes is on time. And, your people-related gratuities, PFs are paid on time. And the fact that your financials are updated on time. Like there's a deadline, 30th September every year. In case you didn't know, I'm telling you, it doesn't change. Every year by 30th September, you need to get your financial statements audited and closed and updated, in the ROC. So I think these are some of the key basic things. I'm just giving an example. But to answer the larger question that Suresh, you asked, I think that, yes, there are all kinds of investors in the world. There are investors who will tell you to become profitable today, but were telling you till yesterday to chase GMV and vanity metrics. And then tomorrow again, they will tell you to chase growth at all costs. So you have to also be smart. Like your investor is your investor. Your investor is not your enemy. Your investor is not your best friend either. Your investor is your shareholder, is your investor. You have to think about setting the culture of transparency, straight numbers, telling the truth, and, meeting the burden of your responsibilities as a director when it comes to corporate governance. Now, to say that your investor was driving you to achieve growth at all costs, fine. So they asked you to achieve growth at all costs, but you can choose how you are going to spend money, right? You can choose you're throwing money on marketing to get more customers. You're giving discounts and cashbacks to get more GMV and to book revenue, but it will be lossy revenue. All that is still okay. This is not unethical. Okay, this is just following growth at all cost strategy and not looking at unit economics and long-term profitability or stability of the company. Corporate governance problems are more related to numbers being fudged, wrong claims being made. Like your number is 100, but you're saying your number, actually what you're putting in the media or Excels that you send to prospective investors is my revenue is 200 instead of 100. That is just fraud. So to that extent, what I can say very humbly, I would like to say is regardless of how much money somebody gives you, to say that my investor made me do that is like saying that somebody put a gun to your head and said that if you don't shoot that person, then you're going to get shot. No investor is doing that. So you can't, pass the buck to them. They can push you in certain directions in terms of strategy. That too, you can decide how much you want to listen to them and how much you want to focus on your own, your management team, your founder team's thought process. There can also be factions within investors. You can have some that you can keep in your corner. But that's my thought process. Like investors can tell you to focus on some vanity metrics and do a lot of PR so that you can attract more money at a higher valuation. But they can't force you to defraud your own company. They can't force you to fudge your numbers, and neither should you listen to them, at that point.
Okay, we have time for exactly 2 more questions. We have about 5 minutes to close. I'm going to ask you a question that Salma Musa has sent us. First, Salma says, team versus culture is a very commonly debated question in companies, but when there are rough times, sales is slow, what matters more? Having the right people or the right company culture?
Both, right? I mean, if you don't have the right company culture, you won't have the right people. And I don't think that one goes without the other, right? Having the right people means that you have people who are all aligned on the same cultural values and on the prospects of the company. I think that the cultural values have to be very clear and have to be part of everyday hiring process, not just leadership hiring, but like, hiring people every day. When you hire people, that has to be part of your thought process, that will this person fit into the cultural fabric that we have built in this company, in the attitude of this company. And I think that even if you have fewer people, let's say you had some people who were not fully aligned, and when you have bad days, they will be the first ones to leave. But people who are fully aligned with you as founders and understand why you are building this company and their cultural values are same as yours, they will stick with you during difficult days. And they will be the ones that you can trust and you can work with to turn around the company every time you are in a difficult situation. So that's where culture is important. You can't build it overnight. You have to spend the work, you have to spend the time in building just as much as you need people to build credibility with founders. Founders also need to build credibility with the team members. And you do that in terms of how you treat them, how you give them opportunities, how you treat them when they are in difficult times in their personal lives.
All right, Upasana, we'll close with one final personal question. You seem very relaxed for a founder of such a large organization. You have many people working for you. You seem to be extremely relaxed, like I said. And you spoke about what's important for a founder in terms of mental health and personal stability. Tell us a little bit about yourself as a person. What kind of movies do you like? What kind of food do you like? What's the last holiday you took?
Okay, so the last holiday I took was this summer. I went to the US with my family, and we did a road trip from, it's called the California One Pacific Highway Road Trip. And it starts from San Diego, which is at the southern tip of California. And we went through several interesting places along the way. And we finally ended it in San Francisco, and more specifically in Yosemite National Park. So it was a fun road trip, and I really enjoyed it. My son really enjoyed it. And we started it. We also stopped somewhere in LA where I have family. My husband's family's brother is there. And then we also, after finishing the road trip, went to the East Coast where my sister and her family lived. So it was a good blast. We spent the time well. And then after doing this 2 weeks of vacation on West Coast and East Coast, I also did some meetings, there to meet some people from the sector.
Work and leisure being mixed.
Yes.
Okay.
But
What's the last?
Other than that, I think that there's only one life, and building my company and the success of my company is very important to me. It's like my first child. But my actual child is also very important for me. So spending time with him is important. Being there for my parents in their old age and for my in-laws is also important. Pursuing my personal hobbies. I like music. I like singing. I like reading. I like writing. And I also like to play some sports. So it's an action-packed week and weekend in my life every day. And I have to put everything in the calendar. Otherwise, I won't make it to half the things. But yeah.
So good quality calendar management is the secret of Upasana's success.
Prioritization, yes.
All right. That brings us to the end of this episode of ET Startup Awards Ask the Expert. Thank you, members of the audience, for sending us your questions. Thank you for patiently sticking with us for 1 hour. And thank you, Upasana, for spending 1 hour of your valuable time. I know how packed your calendar is. And thank you for taking this 1 hour to spend it with us and answer our questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure. And I really hope that it inspires some people to pursue their startup journeys.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.